Hello, everyone. Dr. Chris Martenson here, of course, and I'm here with an off the cuff. This is a solo off the cuff. Usually I have a guest. Today I'm my own guest. I have something that's really been on my mind ever since that report I wrote that came out last Friday, right before the election, and it was on the Great Reset. And I know, listen, today's November 4th, and everybody's really focused on the election and Trump and this and that and what's happening. But I just want to let me get myself ready here. This is really important stuff. It's actually changed the way I've thought about a lot of things. Without putting too fine a point on it, everything that I've been talking about as a probable outcome is now happening. It's happening. It's here. No more waiting. The waiting's over. That's the good news. It comes with a lot of uncertainty, of course, and maybe just a little anxiety over what the plans actually are. But it centers on this idea of the Great Reset. And if you read my piece and if you've been tracking some of the comments I've been making and all the other fine comments other people have been making at the site, you know that this Great Reset has been a long time in the making. And I got to be honest, I'm not entirely unsympathetic to the idea of the Great Reset. Not entirely sympathetic to the methods that are being employed or the way that they tend to go about these things, which is, they don't exactly come out with the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, right? They feel always like they have to couch things and lie or not be direct in terms of what they're after and why. And I'm maybe even sympathetic to that too. I mean, if you look at the context that the average person has, it's so small that I don't think you could just up and give giant belief reorienting material. Because think about this, the little person, me, you, we've been marketing to, and we are marketed to on a daily basis, that the economy, jobs, we need economic growth, we need all this stuff, and this whole idea of infinite economic growth, which you and I know through the crash course is very obviously an unsustainable option. It's not going to happen. It can't happen, right? There's a limit in there. But that's never admitted anywhere out in public. But you know that they're thinking about this. Why? How? Because we're thinking about it. If we can think about it, they can think about it. I mean, this is not the kind of concepts in the crash course about the impossibility of infinite exponential growth is not exactly like super, graduate level math. It's all very simple logic. You just can't grow forever on a finite planet. So, with that said, I want to talk about what this Great Reset is now, and I'm going to do it in the style here that I've grown accustomed to doing the COVID stuff. So this is a private for subscribers only, off the cuff here. And I would ask that you keep it here behind the paywall, because this allows me to say things that I can't say out in public or won't say out in public. So this is the Great Reset. It's happening. It's happening. And this reorients a lot of how I'm thinking about what I'm going to say, how I'm going to say it, what I plan to do, what my priorities are. I've just gone through an extremely large shift in my thinking over the past week or so. So let's start here. Let's start here. This is a piece that came out in 2016, I believe. Yeah. So this comes from the World Economic Forum. We'll get into that crowd in a minute. But that's the Davos crowd, right? These are the world's billionaires, leaders of companies, CEOs, big bankers. It's basically everybody who's everybody in this world of money and finance and commerce and corporations and all that. But here's what they put out a while ago in 2016. And I'm bringing this up because I think they just laid it out. They said, here's how they see the world. And here's how they see the world in 2030. And so they put this out 2016, 14 years ago. Wow. Now we're only, slightly under 10 years, depending on how you count, to 2030. So, and I put three words to the side, which is assess, orient, and act. And it's not different than when you get caught in a riptide. if you're in a riptide, the first thing you need to recognize is you need to assess that you're actually in a riptide. If you get that assessment wrong and you see you're being swept out to sea and you spend your time fighting back towards shore, a lot of people don't make that battle and drown because you use all your energy fighting something you can't. So the first thing is assess. Oh, I'm in a riptide. Orient yourself. Okay, there's the shore, so I need to swim that way or that way, perpendicular to this flow, and then you take that action. So this is kind of like a riptide. There's a very big set of changes that are now afoot. They've been perking along for a while, right? But you and I, we've just sort of been waiting near the shore. Well, now that riptide is pulling out in a big, big way. So let's just tune in. And I love it when people, go ahead and tell me what they plan to do, because then I know what they're going to do. So let's just tune in and see what the World Economic Forum envisioned for us back here. Nice music. Okay, stop right there. They lost me in step one. You'll own nothing, and you'll be happy. You'll see this word happy cropping up a lot. Christine Lagarde recently talked about it with respect to the ECB digital currency, which the ECB is busy gathering the input from customers out there, from the hoi polloi, from the people.
We are still in the review and consideration stage, but we've just launched a public consultation so that consumers and Europeans can actually express their preference and tell us whether they would be happy to use a digital euro just in the way they use a euro coin or a euro banknote, knowing that it is central bank money that is available and that they can rely upon.
You'll own nothing. That's part of the hoi polloi, us little people. You'll own nothing, but who owns it then? Somebody's got to own it. So if you own nothing, that means you're just a renter, and that's the rentier class, the people who provide the rents. They make all the capital flows to them. So the first thing out of the gate, the people from the World Economic Forum would love you to think that you're not going to own anything, but you're going to like it. You're going to be happy with that. So that's kind of a really interesting thing. And this is based on the input of members of the World Economic Forum's Global Future Council. So a lot of people, a lot of marionettes busy helping to craft this brave new future. Okay, you'll own nothing, you'll be happy. Interesting way to lead off with this whole thing. Let's keep going here. Whatever you want. You'll rent. Think that through for a minute. Whatever you want, you'll rent. This is what they're envisioning. This is interesting because if you don't really own anything, then you're not really in control of anything. What are the terms of the rental? How do I stay on the good side of that? What are we using for money? How is it that my daily labor allows me to secure access to the stuff I'm going to want to rent? So whatever you want, you'll rent. You know what's on the other side of the rental coin? Ownership. For there to be a renter, there has to be an owner. And you put those pieces together and you got a rental coin. Okay. But look, they soften it with technology because this techno fantasy stuff, it's actually turns into techno fascism a little later. But they like to pull up this technology because somehow this is the magic salve. This is the bomb. This is the BALM, not BOMB, bomb that it's sort of the religion of the day, if you will. Okay. Hey, but whatever you want, it'll be delivered by drone. You don't even have to leave your house. This is going to be so awesome. You can just stay locked in there like a cow and stay locked in a stall. I don't know. I'm not really bonding with this part of the narrative, as you can tell. But this is the narrative. This is the riptide. We have to be aware that this force is coming forward, and there's a lot of power and money behind it right now. Let's keep going, see if it gets any better. So, okay. Very interesting. So the U.S. won't be the world's superpower anymore. So they're already sort of divvying this whole thing up. They put a nice picture of the UN flag set out there. You got the U.S. right in the middle. I don't even, what is that, Romania to the right? Looks like Turkey to the left. It's maybe Slovenia. I don't know what all those flags are, but anyway, it's just a handful of countries. I'm going to guess it's about a dozen, maybe 15 that they're talking about here being part of this. So they've already started to section the world off. A lot of flags deemed not apply for this job. But the World Economic Forum is going to find a way to stitch together those countries. I think we can figure out who those countries are, and I think we can figure it out, and this is going to be a little bit of a logical leap, but follow with me if you will. Based on which countries chose to withhold life-saving, cheap, off-patent medicines for COVID-19 from their citizens. I think those are the players in this club. I'm going to connect that dot for you just a little bit later. All right, so just a handful of countries are going to dominate, but right now they're already saying, maybe it's even time to start releasing our hold on this idea of countries. This is back in 2016. They're getting a lot more bold about this particular statement right now, and they're basically saying, got to do away with the borders here. So, handful of countries will dominate. Let's keep going. Oh, you won't die waiting for an organ donor. Okay. Yeah, this is part of this techno fantasy part again. Like, it wasn't actually a chief concern of mine that I was going to die waiting for an organ transplant. I mean, a really cool idea. I'm not really clear what this has to do with this brave new world we're going into, or the big reset, like how organs suddenly became part of that. But okay, I think the appeal here is through this idea of techno optimism, I guess. But otherwise, this one was a little off note for me, but anyway, you're starting to get a flavor here, I think, that one of the things that drives a lot of these elites is this fear of nature. Nature has cycles. One of those cycles is death. So there's clearly a death phobia that sort of wraps itself and infuses this whole thing, that they want to engage in this transhumanist project where maybe there's neural links and maybe your experience sets get downloaded and put into the cloud so you're immortal. There's this flavor of that's going on here. Something other than just saying, hey, how about nature? Maybe we could just, live within the bounds that nature set, and we would have actually a fuller, richer experience of life, because death is the cradle of life, as Stephen Jenkinson says. Death is the cradle of life. As soon as you fully embrace your death, you are then free to really, really enjoy this thing we call life. As soon as you're thinking, I don't have to worry because I can 3D print a new heart, all of a sudden you're absolved from needing to remain healthy and make healthy choices, from having to entertain the idea that you are mortal and that you do have a limited time here. A lot of those things go away. So this one, kind of another sour note for me. Not bonding with the vision totally yet at this point in time. Hey, for the good of the environment and our health, you don't get to eat meat. I'm going to trust me. The Davos crowd gets to keep eating the meat, though. Do you know that's the case, right? Like they get to do that. Pretty sure about that. And I'm not totally averse to this, because I know that the way in which we go about raising meat at sort of an industrial scale is not healthy. It's not sustainable. It's a lot of things. This so-called CAFO, C-A-F-O, that concentrated feedlot model where, we take all these steers and throw them in a feedlot and feed them corn, and it's not a good model. I get that. But there is a lot of land that isn't really suited for much else besides herbivores. In fact, the land is benefiting from the herbivores coming in. And if you manage that well, you actually create more abundance, not less. But I get that. We wouldn't be able to raise as much meat. But still, it's kind of an interesting thing to lead off with here, is this idea that you're just going to get this occasional treat. But think of the control that's in here. Let's see if we back this up a tiny bit. Look, it's a very declarative statement that they come up with here, which says, you'll eat much less meat. You will, that's you'll, the contraction, you'll eat much less meat. You will eat much less meat, period. Right, and why? Well, let's think of the children, or the good of the health, our health and the environment. Okay, 1 billion people are going to be displaced by climate change. Oh, we'll have to do a better job at welcoming and integrating refugees. Now, this one actually has a much more subtle tone to it. So we've already seen places like in France, which is one of the main countries that's also on board with this sort of neoliberal, world-improving sort of an idea, what we've seen is we've seen the refugees that have been coming out of North Africa, many of them economic refugees, many of them overpopulation refugees, a few of them war refugees, and a couple environmental refugees. But at any rate, they are coming in such large numbers that they are overwhelming the culture of France. And that's the more subtle part of this, which is that if you want or need people to accept a whole new paradigm, you want them to accept this idea of governing at the world level, that we need this big giant reset that we're all on board for. As I wrote, I get the need for that in many ways, because there's nowhere to go. There's no next continents. There's no, unless the Arctic melts and we can do one last little locusty scramble for whatever resources are locked under the ice. But beyond that, this is it. This is the story. We're out of planet. And so if you want to operate that as a world government, and you want that to be sort of transnational, you can't really have this provincial idea of people holding on to the idea that they have a culture worth preserving. So you have to erode that right away. And plus, when you erode somebody's culture, it knocks out a lot of legs of their stool right away, and it makes them really wobbly and disoriented, which allows you to insert and install a lot of other things. So the way this works, the way I would be doing this, if I was them, and they are doing it this way, is you have to put people really off balance. You have to really inject a lot of fear into people. Once you've injected enough fear and you've created a lot of uncertainty and nobody knows what's happening, the people as a mass will generally beg for you to relieve that tension, to take all that trouble away. So if you want people to really adopt this new program, you kind of have to overwhelm their sense of cultural identity, their provincial patriotism, their sense that I am French and so therefore I'm different from a Brit. You kind of have to erode that. And one of the key ways to do that would be to swamp their culture. And so here they say, we, this is the royal we, mostly you, have to do a better job. So I guess we haven't been doing such a great job at welcoming and integrating refugees. Kind of a funny part, because the way Brussels has been doing their refugee job in Europe is they've pushed it to such a pace that it's impossible to integrate. I think if you had 100 units of culture, I don't think you could put more than 1 unit of refugees in on a yearly basis and have any hope of integrating them. You can't put 50 units in. There's no integration possible. The two systems clash. So the pace has been too fast for a long time. So we'll have to do a better job at welcoming and integrating refugees. So you can see they've been planning this and thinking about this for a long time. But this is a subtle one, because this is actually part of, if you want to install all new belief systems for people, you have to dismantle the old ones. And one of the ways you do that is you shock them. And one of the more shocking things you can do is you can dismantle their culture. It's an old story. I mean, this is what every colonial occupier ever did. This is what France did in Algeria. This is what the United States did to indigenous people and taking their children away and putting them in school and indoctrinating them in a different way. If you want to really obliterate a people as a concept, you got to do away with their culture, because they have all these habits and customs and things that make them feel a sense of identity. So this is a pretty important one right here. You can see the outlines of it. Has nothing to do with being welcoming and kind. It has everything to do with a larger sort of a story. And I get it. I get where they're going with this one. I understand it. But what they're saying on the surface is not what's actually happening. All right, let's carry on here with this amazing video. Polluters will have to pay to emit carbon dioxide. There will be a global price on carbon. This will help make fossil fuels history. Okay. They lose me on this one, because you see me put up this chart all the time that shows the contribution of fossil fuels to the overall energy mix on the planet. Now, unless there's something I don't know about here, in which case I'll have to really reorient my belief system if there is something I don't know about. And the only thing I don't know about is, do they have fusion reactors all worked out in the back? Is there some alien technology that we caught from some crashed UFO or something else, right? Is there something like that? Because if there isn't, we got what we got. Now, I happen to believe that the people who are putting this sort of stuff together, they know the same story. And if they know about some technology I don't know about, fine. But if they have the same data I have, they know that we are at past peak cheap oil, and that we are not going to be able to continue to run this exponentially more use of oil, because you can't do that. And plus, the net energy is coming down on that. So Here's the thing we don't have. You know what we don't have? We do not have a single example, not one right now, of a alternative energy ecosystem that entirely funds itself. Here's what I mean. Bunch of wind towers go up, and the output from those wind towers, we use some of that for our daily living and economic activities. We use some to maintain the system, and another portion goes into all the processes required to rebuild those machines because they wear out. Let's say a wind tower, I'll be generous, lasts 20 years, right? Somewhere in that 20-year cycle with its own power, you would have to completely build a new one. So all the steel that's formed for that, the fancy polymers, like big fiberglass, carbon fiber blades, all the circuitry, the diodes, the control chips, the specialty alloys for the gearboxes, magnets. They're really high-tech things, and the materials flow is really impressive. We have no working examples right now of alternative energy funding itself for its own recreation. None, right? Not at that level, not that kind of stuff. I mean, I'm sure you could make a wooden water wheel and replace it, but that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about trying to maintain our current industrial society on the basis of switching off of fossil fuels. Okay, that currently is not possible, certainly not by 2030. But the other thing that's really contained in here, I like that this is the other subtle part, so let's decode this. There will be a global price on carbon. Well, if there's a global price on carbon, I mean, my goodness, for the good of the planet, if you're a carbon consumer, you should feel guilty about that because, the ice is melting and storms are happening. So if we just pay a little bit more, market forces will work it all out. Here's what market forces will do. All the poor countries, those who aren't in those little flags set at the top, Africa, South America, South Asia, they won't be able to afford the oil. And that means that the oil will just go up in price, fossil fuels will go up in price. And as long as you can pay the price on that, you gain access to it. So really, this is a scheme right here to assure that the elites who have all the money in this pyramid story are the ones who have the access to whatever remains. It's pretty good, but remember, it's for the good of the planet. that's what it's, you can't make this stuff up. But I get it. I mean, this is pretty clever. You don't want to tell people that you want all of that oil for your private jets and your mega yachts because they get a little cranky about that when they're sitting there cold and not able to fuel their cars to get to work. Instead, you let them know that this is because we've all agreed that we have to protect the environment, so we put a global price on carbon because we're trying to make fossil fuels history. When the actual effect of that is you just make sure that fossil fuels become so expensive that only those who have a lot of money printed out of thin air, courtesy of the central banks, handed out to all their friends and neighbors, live next door to a central banker, I guess is what I just said. Because of that, they're the only ones who end up having access to what remains. So this is a way of enshrining that the richest countries get access to the little bit that remains, and also the richest people within those countries get access. That's how I interpret this little piece right here. Okay. You could be preparing to go to Mars. There's that techno fantasy. You could. No, you can't. Let's imagine that 1,000 people end up going to Mars in the next 50 years. I'll be generous. 1,000 divided by 7.8 billion will probably be at 8 billion then. Yeah, you have no chance. It's not going to happen. I ain't going to Mars. So I just love that, It's just like, you could be preparing to go to Mars. You could win the Powerball. It's not going to happen. Okay. But again, this techno fantasy thing, but even with that, if we go to Mars, what the heck's on Mars? If you want to go to Mars, you can go to Mars right now. It's called, there's a valley in Antarctica, which gets no rain, is completely barren and devoid of life as far as we know it, and is bitterly cold. It's kind of like Mars. Go there, spend a month there, spend 2 months there. I don't care. It'll be a lot of fun. Who wants to go to Mars anyway? I mean, the excitement and the adventure, but in terms of a travel destination or a thing to really aspire to, there's no there. I mean, this is barren, lifeless orb. I don't get it. Anyway, techno fantasy though. Scientists will have worked out how to keep you healthy in space, so that's great. Would these be the same scientists who couldn't figure out that hydroxychloroquine actually worked or that ivermectin was cheap and effective? Hopefully not those scientists. maybe different scientists. I hope it isn't no scientists, because those guys didn't work out anything. Look at the fantasy set here. Scientists would have worked out how to keep you healthy in space. I hate to break it to you, you ain't going to space. Not going to happen. Statistically speaking, I'm pretty comfortable with that proclamation right there. Whoa. Time out. What are they tossing in here? Remember, in 2020, it's kind of hard to keep up with it. It's really hard. Let's try. But somewhere around March or April, they threw out the whole, New York Times threw out this idea of alien life and the Tic Tac videos, because the Navy recorded these little things moving across their forward-looking infrared screens and their tracking systems that look like Tic Tacs.
Nickel 6-1 Tango, Roger, oh, got it! Woohoo! Roger, there's troubleshooting. Did you box moving target? No, I took an auto track. Oh, okay. Oh my gosh, dude. Wow, look at it fly!
To start the start of a journey to find alien life, maybe there is some special technology at Area 51 I don't know about. I don't know, but this is the kind of thing that makes my eyebrows go, I think we're being prepped. I actually think we're being prepped. I think there's something coming around this whole idea of UFOs and aliens and whatnot. It's how it's starting to stack up, because, like, I'm not really clear why this would get inserted in here. You know, so this idea that the World Economic Forum telling you that maybe you'll go to Mars, and scientists will have worked out how to keep you healthy in space, and that you might go on a search for alien life. Sounds exciting. At any rate, this is one of those little things that always makes one eyebrow, if I could lift it, it goes, you know. Keep your eye on this one. I'm not certain yet, but I think in the next 12 months we're going to have some sort of a reveal here. That's a guess, but we'll come back to that at some point. All right. Western values will have been tested to the breaking point. They're a little vague on that one, don't you think? What is a Western value? Life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. Those are some American values. Western values, though, if I was going to sort of coalesce them around a set of ideas, the Western values would be around freedom, privacy, self-autonomy, and regulation. So this idea that you have freedoms. They are not privileges, they're rights, that you have certain inalienable rights. Those are, a lot of Western values are very centered on the idea of privacy and autonomy and things like that. That mostly 90% of my life is my own, and then I have to interact with the government for some remaining piece of it. That's kind of a Western value. So they say here, their vision of the future is that Western values will have been tested to the breaking point. So they've broken. So Western values aren't really in alignment with their new future that they're seeing. And those Western values then would include things like economic freedom, privacy, things like that. That's how I see it. The checks and balances that underpin our democracies must not be forgotten. That's awesome. I mean, we're you mean like the media? The fourth estate that dropped every ball you could drop? This is how bad the media was this election cycle and this COVID-19 cycle. Every possible ball that they could have dropped, they dropped. It's like they were playing a game of baseball and they fumbled a football too, and they dribbled the basketball off their foot. Like everything you could possibly get wrong, they got wrong. So I think we could forget that fourth estate kind of a thing at this moment in time. And the judiciary is not working, and governance isn't working, and we hear about congressmen and senators coming away from jobs that pay $138,000 a year or whatever they get paid with $40 million like nest egg. Come on. There's no checks and balances in this system. So I'm not, and they got a nice picture of people having picnics. I'm not sure what that has to do with checks and balances. Interesting use of images, but the checks and balances must not be forgotten. I'm not really clear what they're after here. This one's more like a Rorschach test. You can see in it what you want. I'm not that clear on what that means at this point in time. So that's what the WEF, the World Economic Forum, sort of has in mind at this point in time. And by the way, just so you don't forget, the World Economic Forum, that's that big thing that's every year that's called Davos. It's Davos crowd, but they hold their big World Economic Forum every year in Davos, Switzerland. You see that nice little picture with the mountains, got a nice little ski area. And it's most famous for having this little tiny airport, and so many private jets come flying into Davos that they ran out of space the last time they held it. They didn't hold it this year because COVID. But yeah, that's what they're famous for. And by the way, these millionaires and billionaires, centimillionaires and billionaires, and all these world leaders and central bankers and all that, they are so well loved by the people. They represent the people so well that if you were in Davos at the main airport, you would come in and you would see this greeting crew right here, because obviously people who are as well loved as the crowd that comes and has these world improving plans for all of us, they need a little protection, of course. And sometimes that protection, maybe you need a little extra protection. The whole town is just rimmed with snipers and things like that, and mercenaries. So anyway, that's the World Economic Forum. And by the way, this Great Reset, it's going on. They have sessions on it. They're running sessions on it right now. They're talking about it. They have the Build Back Better campaign you might have seen. There's all these talking points. There's committees formed. There's all kinds of stuff, and it's very complicated. How complicated is it? Is this complicated? This is what the Great Reset means. It has 6 major bubbles in the center, such things as harnessing the 4th industrial revolution. Let me get my little drawing tool out here so we can discuss this. Harnessing the 4th industrial revolution. So this might include things like digital identity, and there's a whole working group around digital identity and what does that mean, and how much digital identity can you have, and things like that, or a blockchain, looking at the whole blockchain thing here, or banking and capital markets, and they're looking at strengthening regional development and revitalizing global cooperation. That code speak on that one right there. Can't have people being all independent and provincial and sort of cultural about this stuff. So we have to revitalize that global cooperation. Developing sustainable business models. A little light on this one because there are no sustainable business models that are based on perpetual extraction of resources from a finite planet. But I think they're working on it. I think they get it. They want to talk about shaping the economic recovery, redesigning social contracts, skills, and jobs. Big theme for them. They're very big in the technology, so robotics is displacing stuff. But for the Davos crowd, the robotics is a done deal. They're going to use robots to build everything. And so now we have to redesign the social contracts and stuff because what are you going to do? Have the robots taxed like labor? Because the labor is the way normally what happened, there's inputs, raw materials, labor, and there were outputs, and the government would take its little pieces as tax along the way. Well, what do you do when it goes from raws into capital alone, which would be robots, and then you have your output? They desperately don't want this part, the production, now to be taxed as if it were labor. So they want to redesign that whole social contract, which means things like universal basic income, which, by the way, there's nothing universal about it. It will not be evenly shared. It's not basic in any way, shape, or form. It's not income because it's basically a stipend that will be given. And what shall be given can be taketh away. You know how this story goes, right? So kind of weird, but that's their solution to, geez, we're going to build everything with robots. We don't really need people working. Why don't we give them a little taste of that sugar? We'll give them a little basic income, but it'll be a fraction of what we're actually earning off of this story, and hopefully a smaller fraction than if we actually had to pay these people as employees. And then restoring the health of the environment. I think they're legit concerned about the environment. Everything that I see when I see what the World Economic Forum is putting out, or the IMF, they're legit concerned about climate change. And again, that might be just a convenient foil for them to sort of explain why you can't have as much carbon anymore, while they still have jets and yachts and crap like that and 6 houses. Pay no attention to that, right? But here's the thing. Anybody who's intelligent can look at the same stuff that's in the crash course, right? Look at the economy, energy, environment. The economy was based on this perpetual exponential expansion of debt. That doesn't work. You have 2 choices in that model. You either let that grow until it breaks on its own, or you perform some sort of a voluntary reset. That's what they're wrestling with, and I think they're right. And I think that it has to be done. They just can't come right out and be honest and say, oops, we, the ruling class, should have done something about this 50 years ago. We didn't. So we have to do something now. And then in the environment, flashing warning signs everywhere, loss of species. We do have the Siberian Arctic has failed to reform ice even here in November. It's just crazy at this point in time what's happening. So very fast paces of change around that stuff. And then in the energy side, unless there's something hidden we don't know about, peak oil's a real deal. They have access to better information than we do. And so all of that comes due in this thing that we're seeing over here. Okay. Very complicated, though. Look at all the little things they got. Every one of these is there's earnest people, professors and committees and consultants chewing on every one of these things from, I don't know. What do we got here? They're working on batteries, corporate governance, forests. That's like all over the map. I'm not quite clear how they arranged this wheel. I think they got version 2 of maybe cluster these in some more organized pattern. But that was all, this is new thinking, and all that other stuff was based on, that first movie we watched was based on a 2016 thing. They've crisped the message up quite a bit. So this just came out in October. This is about the Great Reset particularly. This is the first minute and 30 seconds from an hour and 20-minute presentation. The rest of the hour and 20 minutes is very boring people droning on and on about this kind of a stuff, but you actually might want to listen because they're going to tell you what they're envisioning. But at any rate, let's look at the imagery. Let's look at the pace of this. Let's look at how they're pitching this now, having had a few more years to work on it. Pretty telling, I think, what they've come up with here. You can see the concern there, the environment, the fragility. They have COVID images wrapped in here. Obviously overcrowded. So our systems need a reset. Press the reset. Look at all these systems that they're pushing out here. They're pushing all these things in reverse right now, running the things back in. So they're talking about how do we undo a lot of what we've already done. We press the reset button. Everyone has a role to play, right? You can be a healthcare worker. You could, I don't know, be a one-armed jump roper. You could protest, run ultrasounds. There's a baby. I'm not clear what's happening here, but interesting images. Obviously, the environmental concern, of course, wanting to preserve the natural beauty. I get it. This is an image they used in several of their publications and posters, the Great Reset, where they're looking up at the trees. So they would like you to join them there. So notice there was a lot of sort of shocking images there and sort of the pacing of it. You can tell they're very urgent about this whole thing. All right. Well, not that urgent because it didn't just sort of arise out of nothing. There's already books written about the Great Reset. And this Klaus Schwab guy and Thierry Malloret, they're both very deep into the Davos crowd set, and so they're talking about the Great Reset. I haven't read the book yet. I don't know everything that's in it, but I plan to look at that and see what's in there. I think it's really important to understand what they're after here and why. And so, again, I'm not unsympathetic to the idea that you either just don't notice that you can't do infinite growth on a finite planet, you run that until it breaks all on its own. And when it does, ecosystems crash, or maybe oil's 500 a barrel, and hypersonic nuclear missiles are flying because we're all fighting over it. That's sort of the uncontrolled path. You just let it happen. And then there's a controlled path where intelligent people see it coming and they decide to do something about it. That's what's happening right now. That's what they're doing. And I get it. So I'm not unsympathetic to that. And maybe you gotta lie about this. Maybe you can't just come out and be honest about this stuff. Maybe it would have been like in 1972 coming out and saying, UFOs are real or something. You can't just do that. People aren't prepared. So this is a psychological preparation campaign here, and it's trying to prepare us for a variety of things. One of the very, very best summaries I read on this, and a number of you sent this to me, thank you for that, is The Great Reset for Dummies, by Tessa Fights Robots is the name of the nom de plume of this particular author. This came out on, looks like October 28th, so pretty recently. And I really liked how Tessa framed all of this. Really good writing. I invite you to read the whole thing. I like this. Look at this. The Great Reset is a massively funded, true, desperately ambitious, also true, internationally coordinated project led by some of the biggest multinational corporations and financial players on the planet and carried out by cooperating state bodies and NGOs. Its soul is a combination of early 20th century science fiction, idyllic Soviet posters, I like that, nice touch, and the obsessiveness of a deranged accountant, nice, with a gambling addiction, and an upgraded digital version of Manifest Destiny. I like that, an upgraded digital version of Manifest Destiny. This is our manifest, you will go to Mars and have a printed heart after you get your drone package of gummy bears. I don't know. I love that. Upgraded digital version of Manifest Destiny. I think that's about right. The mathematical reason for the Great Reset is that thanks to technology, the planet has gotten small and the infinite expansion economic model is bust. Go, Tessa. Nice. I love seeing these ideas finally emerge out there in the world. It's fantastic. And, they're not that difficult, these ideas. So the question is why it took this long. And it wasn't because it's hard. It's kind of like running into when I talk to audiences, I'm like, who was taught how money is created in the banking system in school? For all practical purposes, hands never go up. And they've only gone up twice in my whole career of this. And it's not because it's hard. It's just that somebody or the system has an interest in not having those ideas be actively discussed. So infinite expansion economic model, that's a bust. That's about to go through Schopenhauer's third stage of truth, right? It'll be ignored, it'll be fought, and then it'll be accepted as self-evident. People will be going, oh, duh, hey, have you heard? You'll have family members who've never talked to you. Have you ever really thought about how you can't grow forever on a finite planet? It's coming. I like it. Anyway, here it is in print. Love it. Way to go, Tessa. But obviously, to continue on here, the super wealthy want to continue staying super wealthy, and so they need a miracle, another bubble, plus a surgically precise system for managing what they perceive as their limited resources. Thus, they desperately want a bubble providing new growth out of thin air, love those, literally, while simultaneously they seek to tighten the peasants' belts, an effort that starts with behavioral modification, aka resetting the Western peasant's sense of entitlement to high life standards and liberties. See also this awful privilege. Yeah, so we're going to have to reset our culture. Those Western values need to be reset. This whole sense of entitlement to high living standards and liberties. Can't have that. So there's a dystopian angle to this whole thing too, which is sort of, you can feel the command and control coming, right? You may have to be, they call it a common pass, what they're experimenting with, which is a barcode that you would get in order to be able to get on a plane and travel. And the barcode would indicate whether you have had either appropriate levels of serum antibodies to COVID or an appropriate vaccine when one comes or something. But you might as well be cattle in this story. We track all cattle are chipped. And if you want to move on across state lines, there's a whole tracking system around that. So you can feel the tightening, which basically says you can't travel as much. But the reason for that, the fundamental reason for that is we can't have the little people. This is how they're thinking. I'm channeling them right now. We can't have the little people thinking they can just burn all these precious resources doing the little people things, right? Taking those useless trips to Aruba every year with your family. Can't have that. So that's what we mean by high life standards and liberties, where you get to decide where your money goes, how you're going to spend it, what you put in your body. So they're breaking down a lot of walls with COVID, and what they've managed to break down so far includes your own sense of your body being something that you have any agency or control over. And this idea that if vaccines become mandatory, that chips away at that idea that you decide whether you want to have that or not, for the greater good, right? But it could well go beyond that, and I think that's really what's at play here. So let me tell you my philosophy of life real quick. If someone, or an organization, if they have a plan, right? If they have this plan, and they say they're going to do something around this plan, And then that thing happens. My philosophy is that they probably did it. It's complex, I know, right? So they're telling us what they're going to do. Our job is to get our minds around it fast enough and adjust to it fast enough so that we can position ourselves for this in a way that's really meaningful, because it's coming. You can already feel it coming. It's already happened. It is happening. It's not coming. It's here. And it's already here, wrapped around this whole context of COVID itself, right? So look at this. Says here, this is their Great Reset. I told you they used that same image of the forest in their posters, and so here we see it. It says there's an urgent need for global stakeholders to cooperate in simultaneously managing the direct consequences of the COVID-19 crisis. That's it. The COVID-19 crisis is the reason that's being used to urgently elevate the Great Reset. To improve the state of the World Economic Forum is starting the Great Reset Initiative. Beware the world improvers. All this time, though, you knew there was a reason why. So why in places like the United States, the United Kingdom, France, Germany, Sweden, most of Europe, did you ever wonder, like, this is what I've been sort of hinting at on the public side of things, because I can't say this directly out in the public world. But there's this idea that it's impossible. The case of the dog that did not bark, it is literally impossible that all the health authorities of each one of these countries is unable to process in their minds the immediate necessity and value of something like vitamin D levels to limit both the spread and the scope of COVID. And so just one bureaucrat, just one health authority in one country is complete hero forever if they just tell their people, take vitamin D, and everybody takes it. How is it possible that not one of them has done that? Well, the reason it's not possible that not one of them has done that, to double negative that up, is because COVID-19 is actually needs to be a crisis, and it needs to be unmanaged, and it needs a certain number of people to die, and it needs to have this fear thing if it's being used as an excuse to go through this Great Reset. And again, I'm not averse to the idea that we do need this Great Reset. This whole idea that we're just going to locust our way through all the resources until the whole thing collapses is a non-starting conversation. If you know we have to get there, they're being living in a more balanced relationship with this larger natural world. You got to get there somehow. This is the strategy they've come forward with, but now it makes more sense, right? Now you can say, oh, well, yeah, obviously you wouldn't want something cheap and easy like vitamin D to derail all this wonderful momentum you've got around this great big initiative you've got going on. So that's what the Great Reset is. And it at least in part explains why it's important for you. Here's action item 1. Don't listen to anything that's coming out from them about how to treat or manage COVID. Listen to the doctors who are actually saying, screw that, figuring out for themselves. Listen to the data. Look at the studies that are coming out from all these little third world countries who, by the way, aren't in the club. Their flags don't get to fly in this limited number of countries that will dominate. So they can't afford $3,000 a series remdesivir that doesn't actually work anyway. Can't spend that kind of money. So that's why when you look at something like India, which is a very powerful country, but I don't think in the club, because they're busy just using hydroxychloroquine, and their deaths per million are a fraction of what they are in all the countries that are busy out there excitedly going through this Great Reset. So you can feel it coming. This is the context for it. And so this has a lot of implications that we need to go through. So, and by the way, there's going to be just an enormous number of bit players, circling around that wheel of everything. It's going to get transformed, and you got people, what are they? VP of Analytics, site selection consultant, principal and founder of whatever this thing is, investment advisories. So strategies and data for our economic recovery. So anyway, there's just going to be tons of this stuff coming out. Lots of busy work for the intelligentsia class and the elites. And by the way, one of their strategies, they're putting a lot of female faces on this whole thing. Head of the IMF, Christine Lagarde. Head of the World Bank, this woman, Georgieva. I forget how to pronounce it. Anyway, that's one of the strategies that I think is being pursued because it's popping up quite a lot. Don't disagree with it. I think it's a great strategy. In many cases, you'll find me over here going, I see what they're doing. I'm golf claps. But at the same time, their interests and your interests may be aligned, and if they are, it's coincidence. So you want to make sure you understand what they're doing. And they keep talking about, technology. Technology is going to be the most amazing thing. Look at this sexy woman with a really crisp photograph. The digital transformation powering the Great Reset, a community paper. Man, that just looks amazing, right? That's awesome. Pay no attention to the fact that a lot of the digital transformation is the barcodes and the tracking and the other things, which are all designed to use AI to nudge people into certain outcomes and to track the human capital stock, as well as every berry and twig that might come along in this story. So there's like that coin from before. The technology coin always has two sides. It has an awesome side. It's got a dark side. They only keep telling us about the awesome side, but you and I know there's a dark side in there. So this reorients a lot of stuff for me, and I have to think long and hard about how I talk about this in public. I can't run afoul of this. If you look at just my own, the growth. So all I wanted to do with COVID was reach people with information that they might find useful and helpful. And thousands of emails have come in and said, thank you. You really helped and saved. And people who got COVID who are managing it successfully with the treatment regimens that we've identified and that other people have identified. That's all wonderful, but my subscriber count on YouTube was just skyrocketing until the day that I mentioned hydroxychloroquine, and it just flatlined ever since. So I ran afoul of the Great Reset, of the story, of the pharma companies, whatever constellation of players were out there who were interested in not having hydroxychloroquine come forward for whatever sets of reasons, including maybe the idea that it would have not been awesome for the Great Reset. Because of that, I realized that I have to, there's my personal mental map for this is that it's kind of like I'm trying to pitch and we're in the bottom of the ninth, the game, we're up by 1, bases are loaded, got a 3-2 count. So for you guys and gals who aren't baseball people, this next pitch really matters. I got to tuck it right over the corner of the plate. So some of my interests are aligned with their interests, and some of your interests are aligned with their interests. I do believe that we have to refashion our relationship to the natural world. I'm not a big fan of their whole techno-hopium stuff. I love technology to a point, but not if it makes you lose sight of the dark side of that and makes you lose connection with nature and all that. I'm not afraid of nature. I happen to believe in it, and I do think that their whole attempt to get us away from nature so that we'll make meat and go to Mars and whatever, make plant-based meat. Whatever their stories are, I'm not as much of a fan of that. But there are places where we line up. I know that we do need to limit oil use. I know that we do need to start moving towards different solutions. I know that we do need to start localizing and relocalizing. Not as a point of we want to, which we should want to, because it's awesome to relocalize and become part of the community again, have meaning and purpose in an area that you can actually have influence in. That's actually pretty cool. But we're going to have to do it. And so this is starting to come down and enforced. I'd rather not have it come down in this whole dystopian, you're tracked and monitored, and if you wander out of your district, penalties happen, your digital coins get turned off, whatever they have in mind. And I understand if you have to solve this for hundreds of millions or billions of people at once, I get it. It's a pretty big challenge. But for you and me, there's a better world in here, and I'm excited about it. And what I'm most excited about, though, is that I can feel that because of this effort that's going on right now, that this is a time of incredible transformation. And this is like one of the, like, if you ever wondered, like, what would it have been like to be back there during the time of the founding fathers, to be one of the people contributing to writing and signing your name to Declaration of Independence or something like that, right? That's what this time is. It's just like that. Things are getting rewritten enormously. I'm not sure if they're going to be able to pull off all of their transformations the way they envision. I don't think they've thought through the energy side of this story completely. But again, maybe there's something in there I don't know about. But assuming there isn't, they haven't really thought that part through. So guess what? The best laid plans sometimes don't survive first contact with the enemy. I think what we're going to see here in this story is that this is a very, very tricky reset transformation to try and pull off. It may or may not go as planned. Good chance it doesn't go as planned. Because of that, this really elevates the importance of being resilient, really resilient, because sort of like Reagan's trust but verify that he said about the Soviets back in the day, this is, we're going to hope that they pull this off well, but we're going to make sure we have what we need just in case they don't. Because if they fumble this ball, you could easily see global supply chains breaking down. You could easily see massive disruptions. You could easily see all sorts of things not working quite according to script and plan in this case. So if that's the case, you're going to want to be as resilient as you possibly can be. You want to be able to control the bottom of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Food, shelter, warmth, right? You got to make sure you got those taken care of as best you can, and be resilient around that. But most importantly, the biggest thing that's got to happen right now is we got to go through the adjustment reaction, or the 6 stages of awareness, as fast as possible. I'm trying to dial myself through this as quickly as I can because this is kind of important. And, this is really big kind of reorienting material because it's happening. It's here. It's happening. The Great Reset, like everything I thought was going to sort of come about is starting now. It's just not happening at the national level. It's happening at the global level. Didn't quite see that coming that way, but that's fine. And here we are. So what you can do to cycle through these as quickly as possible, the denial stage around COVID, it's just the flu, bro. Remember that stage? I got all those headlines saved. That was funny and tragic. But, for denial for people in this story might be, well, yeah, I hear, the World Economic Forum, yeah, smart people, I'm pretty sure they have my best interests at heart. That's a form of denial. They don't. If your interest in theirs align, it's an accident, something like that. There's the anger stage, and people are going to be saying, "Oh, still, you're a nut, conspiracy theory, all that stuff." But it's right out, it's on their website now, so we can just dispense with that right away. And there's all this bargaining, which to me is a lot of what this whole election cycle was in the United States. A lot of people saying, "Well, maybe if we elect this person instead of that person, then something's different." It doesn't matter who you elect. It doesn't change a darn thing in this particular part of the story about the fact that we're running out of oil and we're running out of resources and we're running out of environment. And there's just a lot of people, and this whole manifest destiny of everybody can be as much as they want to be and secure whatever spot they want and whatever resources they want just based on merit and hard work. Nope. That era is drawing to a close. So we're facing a future of less stuff, but that's okay. Can be a future of more quality, higher quality of life, all of that. But let's get past the bargaining stage, which basically boils down to, if we do X, can we just keep doing what we were doing till at least I retire and make it through retirement and maybe get in the pine box? Because that'd be great. Sometimes that bargaining won't get you where you need to go. All right, the fear stage, of course, a lot of ways there's going to be a lot of anxiety whooping up for people around this. This is an important one. We want to make sure that we don't consent to their fear games. So everything I'm reading about in the COVID stuff right now across all the Western press is just fear, 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 fear. And I'm seeing this in the whole election thing here in the US right now, fear, 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 fear. But you see it in the UK right now. They're like, a terrorist attack is imminent, right? And they got guns and police everywhere. These are fear campaigns. That helps soften the terrain a little bit. I get that. Makes a lot of sense. Pushing people's limbic system architecture from a neuro-linguistic programming side, it makes sense. And it takes a toll. So if you're in a riptide and you're being swept out to sea and you are wasting time panicking about that rather than orienting and figuring out how you're going to use whatever energy you have to swim out of this thing, that's time wasted, it's energy wasted, it's all of that. So the fear is actually a motivation killer in this story, and it saps essential energy that needs to be focused with laser precision on the projects of gaining all these different forms of capital. I'll go into that in just a second. This whole idea that they have all the power and you're powerless is complete bullshit. You have all the power. You decide if you're going to consent to their fear-based campaigns or not. You get to decide how you're going to spend your time during the day. You get lots of decisions, but the one thing they can never take from you is your core soul, your core integrity. You can give that up. You can allow them to misuse that, or you cannot allow it. You have all the power in the story in terms of figuring out the role you want to play and how you're going to conduct yourself. They can't do anything about that. And so finally, if we can get to acceptance or just some level of saying, is what it is, what do we do about that? That's the purpose of this whole conversation we're having here, as one-sided as it is. Sorry about that. I wish we could be doing it in person. I would love to get the feedback around this. I talked about the adjustment reaction before. I would steer you back to that material. I'll put the link, I think, down below this to the Peter Sandman article about that. It's very natural. This is big material I've just covered. It's going to trigger a lot of things in a lot of people, and that's normal, expected, usual, customary, not to be minimized. It's not something to try and get past as fast as possible. Have the adjustment reaction. Just understand that anything that you do today in reaction to this particular material that I'm talking about and this giant change and this great reset is coming, it's an underreaction. It'll feel like an overreaction at the time, and in retrospect, it will be an underreaction. So that's where we are on that. All of which is a summary for saying, here's where I think my interests, your interests, and their interests all align, which is we all want to be as resilient as possible, and we want to be resilient in all these different forms of capital as much as possible. And we want to do that because A, they may not succeed, but B, by becoming resilient in these ways, this is what allows me to be happy, and I sleep really well at night. Believe it or not, I swim in this awful material every day, all day, mostly, except when I'm outside with the animals, and it doesn't affect me really all that much because I have agency in this story, and I'm doing something about it, and I'm applying my efforts to this particular project here. So knowledge capital, really important, emotional capital, social capital, this is all the stuff we're going to need. So this great reset aligns with my interest because I want to reach the remnant. I want to reach all those people out there who think like we do. I want to gather the tribe. I want to be part of a tribe of people who understand that we have a role to play in all of this, not as sort of farm animals who are just, not causing a lot of fuss, but as active creators of this next thing that's coming along and coming forward. We all have a role in that. And so my tiny corner piece of that here in Western Massachusetts is my interest. I want to create as much living capital and abundance as I can on this piece of land that we're on. And I want to create as much community and social capital here as I can. I want to start reforming the cultural piece of this because in 100 years from now, this all has to look completely different. We can't just use the same things we've been using so far and expect things to be any different. That's why I'm people are like, oh, we could go to Mars. I'm like, dude, if you can't operate the Earth, the most forgiving spaceship ever, in a way that has any sort of sustainability with it.
Visibility is almost zero. Anyone gets lost, hone into my suit's telemetry. You ready?
Ready.
You're not going to make it on Mars. You're going to screw that up even worse. It's less forgiving. So we need a cultural shift here as well. Very much deeper story around that, but we can save that for another time. And building up your material capital is super important. Knowledge capital, material capital, get it going, because who knows how much longer this sort of globalized, just-in-time system is really going to operate. Another year, another 10 years, I don't know, but it's not forever. That's what the Great Reset tells us. So that's what's been on my mind. As you can tell, I've had something on my mind. I would just want to share that with you. And let's have a conversation about this, and let's keep rolling. And I am very sensitive to the idea that this is going to elicit adjustment reactions, and I'm having my own. This is a pretty big deal for me to say it's happening. Like, this is coming down, and I'm 99% sure that most of the framing that we use in the crash course about the 3 E's and the systems view and how it all really can't work forever as it was and was due for a big change. I believe that a lot of that is the undercurrent for what this Great Reset is going to be all about. Obviously, they can't just come out and say that. So they're going to talk about it in terms of human rights, women's rights, being sensitive to refugees, understanding that you just can't eat as much meat because, the environment, or we're going to have to tax the carbon because, there's things to be saved, all of that other stuff. That may all have a kernel of truth in it, but the subtext to it is this: the resource story is over and it's shifting, and the elites would like to make sure that they have what I would consider to be more than their fair share of access to it. And I get how and why they're going about this in the ways that they are. Makes sense. So, not entirely unsympathetic to it, and I don't entirely know what to do about it yet, except to pursue the forms of resilience as much as possible. So that's where we're at. Thanks for listening. Let's have the conversation down here in the comments below, and we'll just keep trying to swim out of this riptide. Remember, go that way or that way, not straight into it. All right, that's it. I will see you, next time we do.